Hey, welcome to the channel. We hope that you enjoy today's stories and check out the chapters on the video to see all the stories for today. But before we get into this video, subscribe to the channel and hit that bell icon to get notified when we release a new video. So let's get into the video.
For the former non-believers in the paranormal, what incident made you finally believe? Part 1.
Story 1. I used to think that Ouija boards were completely fake, so I decided to test that theory. I was not touching the Ouija board, but two friends were. I had them ask a question about the middle name of a member of my family. There was no way my friends could have known the name. It was an unusual name and spelling. The pointer stated the name and spelt it correctly. The room felt distinctly colder, something my friends noticed, too. Ouija boards are one thing I won't allow in my house, and I forbid my kids from playing with them. Story 2. This one could have been a dream, but I am pretty sure it wasn't. When I was a kid, I fell asleep with a nightstand lamp on. It gave off a warm yellow light. I woke up in the middle of the night randomly, which I never do. This really never happens to me except when I am really sick, which I wasn't at the time. I noticed the warm yellow light turned purple and my whole room was covered in purple light. I was so confused about it, so I did a quick scan of my room without really moving much in my bed. In front of my bed was a tall black hooded figure looking at me. Like they were just standing there, at the foot of my bed, staring right at me. I hid under my blanket pretending to not have seen anything and told myself to just fall asleep. Which I did eventually. In the morning someone had turned off my night light. It wasn't any of my family members, as in, it couldn't have been them. Story 3. My friend took 3 pictures of our kids sitting outside of a shop in Williamsburg, Virginia right after we had finished a ghost tour of the town. Each of the pictures is separated by maybe a few seconds. In the second picture, casually walking behind one of our daughters, is the crystal clear image of an old man and I believe his wife, strolling down the cobblestone street that no longer exists in that spot. It is now a short retaining wall with some shrubs. You can see the shrubs fade through the old man's coat, which appears to be made of wool, and he has a starched, white collar. He is pointing into the distance as if to show us something interesting. My friend and I were standing side by side as she took these pictures. No one was there behind, in front of, or anywhere near our children. She sent us the pictures later after she was looking through them. It's pretty incredible. I have it here on my phone right now. Story 4. I'm not sure I do believe, but my aunties love to go on ghost hunts in which they've said they were possessed and begun saying things which they didn't want to. They described it almost as being in the back seat of your own mind and watching everything happen but having no control. And one of them used to babysit for a friend and took him to a graveyard to visit my granddad, and the second he walked through the gates he bawled his eyes out and he begged and begged to leave. Apparently he saw things he didn't want to see anymore. He would have been a toddler at this time. Story 5. I was around 8 to 9 at the time and visiting my uncle's apartment with my mom and brother. I was sent to my uncle's room to fetch something, I don't know what. That room remains to pitch dark even in the afternoon and always gave me weird vibes. So, I went inside the room and saw a shadow figure behind the bed. I don't know what it was, but I freaked out and ran out of the room. To this day I don't want to be in that room alone. Story 6. I've always been doubtful of the paranormal. However, I witnessed a dark shadow figure and I'd often find scratches that were unknown. One night, I had some friends over and we heard weird noises with no source of sound. Everyone was asleep beside us. When we went to investigate it, we saw poltergeist activity, like our plates suddenly falling off the shelves and the water randomly running. Story 7. I think using a Ouija board kind of made me question the weird. And when I heard Coast to Coast AM talking about strange things respectfully, even naively and innocently, I became more open. But that didn't mean I experienced anything I would initially call weird until later in my life. but when it did, and I eliminated all known rational explanations, it was fun to join the science of questioning things deeper than mainstream science is willing to, and realize that mainstream science is pseudoscience. Story 8. Just a lot of stuff, mostly strange noises in my house and doors opening for no reason. I love this subreddit so much. It's better than a Stephen King novel. I'm a horror fiction fan/writer, and I find all of the posts so fascinating. Story 9. My grandpa passed away in December of 2021, and he always said that he would come back and haunt us. He always thought it was funny and was joking. 2 or 3 weeks after he passed, my entire family had at least one paranormal encounter, and we all believe it was him. I won't tell their stories because it's not my place, but one night I fell asleep around 12:30 a.m. and I woke up to a loud crash, almost like a pan being dropped onto concrete from 6 or 7 feet up from the ground. I woke up and jumped, but eventually fell back to sleep because I couldn't figure out what it was. The next morning when I woke up, I and my grandma found an old speed limit sign that had dropped out from behind her desk that she has in her living room. This sign has no way of just dropping on its own, as it was propped up against the wall on the desk and had been there for a couple of years. We all think it was my grandpa messing with us one last time before he was ready to move on. Story 10. I posted this a while back. I just saw this, and bad memories just started flooding in. I was in high school when a family of 4, husband, wife, and 2 kids under 10, that lived right across our house was murdered in the middle of the night and their house was burned. I still remember the time when we looked out our bedroom window and can see the silhouette of a child standing by one of the children's bedroom windows while the house was burning. We kept screaming for her to try to get out. We found out later that she was already dead at that time and was just slumped by the window. In the middle of the night for years, my family and the neighbors would hear screaming, crying, and even the ice cream truck music. This was around 1 to 3 a.m. and cell phones didn't exist yet, so no one with a fancy ringtone around. We were freaked out since it became an empty lot after the incident. We moved out a few years later, and that was one of the reasons why. Story 11. Oh, when I was in 3rd grade or so, my family and I were looking for a new house since until then we were living in an apartment. I went to this one house which was well kept, neat, and tidy, and as we were looking through the house, my brother and I decided to look at the bedrooms upstairs. Me, being a curious child, decided to summon Bloody Mary. I know this sounds kind of stupid, but hear me out. I went up to the vanity in the room and did as the legend stated. The weirdest thing that happened that day was one of the drawers opened without anyone touching it. I tried telling my parents this multiple times, but they never bothered to listen. Story 12. I always wanted to share this, and it just occurred to me to look for this sub, and here you are. I never had a strong opinion on it until my wife and I bought our current house like 10 years ago. It is ancient from 1773 in very rural New England, like you cannot see another house from my house, just trees. It is dark as hell at night, and we have basically rebuilt/repaired the entire thing down to reframing all the walls and floors, rewiring and replumbing the whole thing from scratch. I basically have a master's degree in carpentry from YouTube at this point. It was nearly falling over when we bought it. We got it mostly for the land as we're into farming stuff. This might sound made up, but it isn't. Seen 3 ghosts here, the most distinct of which was just a cat. It was invisible, but it twined around my legs for a solid minute. My clothes moved and everything. I wasn't really scared, I was just at a loss, like, what the heck is that, a cat? The other 2 ghosts are just indistinct blobs of white mist sort of stuff that run around the place once in a while. They vanish as soon as they get near a person. I found this old coin on the walls. It's an old penny the size of a quarter. I have a vivid memory of the first time I picked it up. Ever since then, I can sort of tell what the house, or what some collective consciousness associated with the house, thinks of stuff. It's not super communicative, but every once in a while it will give me a very clear message. Its opinions are as follows. Most things are hilarious. It thinks almost everything I ask it or think about is pretty funny. Loves kids. Like any kids. No desire to steal them to the ghost world or anything, just loves them. Doesn't really care much about me or most people. Has expressed a slight fondness for me, but like very slightly. It barely cares, lol. Says very clearly all the time that it doesn't mind. And also gives the clear impression to me that spirits or ghosts or whatever in other places also share this emotion most of the time. Like they don't mind if you are scared of them or if you mess with their stuff. Mostly they just don't mind. Also, my plumber, whom I have a close relationship with due to all the GD plumbing I have done lol, says he sees ghosts in old buildings all the time. This guy is not somebody you'd assume would have a ghost story. He's like an old mill worker. He talks about it really matter of fact like they are an animal or something. He could be describing a pest like a raccoon. He says they push his employees around and even tried to drag a guy away down a hallway one time by his feet, and they had to yell at it to chill until it stopped.
If you're enjoying today's video, smash that like button and consider subscribing to the channel for more videos and interesting stories. Now let's get back to the stories of our lives.
Story 13. I think I have always believed in the paranormal, seeing faces everywhere when I was growing up, that eventually stopped, and nothing happened until I was around 11 to 12. I was in my bedroom about to fall asleep, still scared of the dark. I would always have the light outside my room on to illuminate underneath my door. I'm that sleepy, but not asleep. Then I started to hear my doorknob turning, which made me shoot my eyes open to my door, which is when I was what I think most people refer to as a shadow person. It was at least 7 foot tall and had opened my door, I'd say about 1 foot open, and was staring directly at me not even 2 meters from me. This shadow was fully black and was very clear due to the light outside my door being on. All it did was stare for a few seconds and then slowly close my door. Freaked to my core, I shot out of bed and ripped the door open hoping I would see my parents or my sister, but no. I ran to my sister's room to ask if she had just opened my door, but she was studying in her room, and 5 feet 6 inches, so it couldn't have been her, and my parents' door was locked shut while they slept. I remember I had the worst nightmare after that, where I was in my room in the pitch black and sets of red eyes started to appear all around my room. I would try to scream, but nothing came out. I eventually woke myself from trying to scream so hard. Since that has happened, nothing else too crazy went on. I'm now in my 20s and live in an old building of apartments. Always hear weird noises of tapping or things moving, but no books flying off the shelves. Story 14. I never believed it until I moved into a circa 1900 house. The first few months, I rationalized all the things that were strange, like I must have left the light on or thought about turning on the kettle, etc. One day a book flew off the shelf right as I was about to walk past, and there was no way I could rationalize that. We've never felt fearful, and 3 out of 4 family members have had regular experiences. Story 15. I was 13 or 14 years old babysitting Sam, 2-year-old male nephew, Anna, 4-year-old female niece, and their cousin Tim, 6-year-old male, in the summer of 2004 or 2005. Apparently, my sister woke me up at 6 to 7 a.m. and asked to babysit the kids, and I'll be the only one home for a couple of hours. I was half asleep and took in half of what she said. The house was empty with the 4 of us. Sam was getting tired around noon, so I took him to his parents' room to nap while I watched YouTube. Anna and Tim were playing in the downstairs living room watching SpongeBob. I hadn't noticed that I locked the bedroom door at first, but I unlocked it when Anna came in for her toys, and she politely asked me, "Can you please leave the door unlocked so I can come in for my toys?" I apologized to my niece and continued streaming. Anna kept coming in the bedroom every 5 to 10 minutes after that. Anna and Sam slept in the same room as their parents and kept most of their belongings there because my sister still lived with her in-laws. I got irritated because I didn't want my nephew to wake up in a bad mood and cry. I heard knocking and whispered that the door was unlocked. The knock continued. I whispered again for Anna to open the door. Knocking continued. I got up and walked 5 feet to the door and opened it. No one was there. I thought maybe she ran. I closed the door and sat down in the computer chair. Knocking. I whispered for her to come in. Nothing but continued knocking. I got up and opened the door. No one was there. Silence except for the faint laughter of Anna and Tim. I walked down the stair steps, bent over and saw Anna and Tim playing in the living room. Confused, I went back up to the bedroom. Closed the door, and before I could sit down, someone was knocking on the door. I slowly walked up and placed my hand on the door, reassuring myself that I'm not losing my mind because I can clearly feel the vibration of force. I placed my hand on the doorknob and opened the door. No one. I looked around and thought, maybe it's my sister's brother-in-law, he lives there too. I felt uneasy, so I woke Sam up and had Anna and Tim play outside until my sister came back home. I asked her if anyone dropped by. She replied, "No. You were home alone. Everyone is at the hospital because my MIL had a stroke early this morning. That's why I had you babysit the kids. I only came back to check on you. Everyone will come home later tonight." I told her what happened, and she replied, "Oh, it's probably their grandma. She knocks once in a while when she's hungry or thirsty. She died in this house. Her in-laws practice shamanism, part of our culture." I was a skeptic, and ever since I believed. Story 16. Had to go to a house that was on the market for a job. I got the key out of the lockbox, went in, and felt drawn to the basement. I never really look around the house I'm working in, but I went down there and got a mental image of a cemetery, and I just felt drawn to the back sliding door for some reason. I walked back upstairs, and I heard a super loud sigh and crying sound. I called out in case I wasn't alone in the house, but nobody else was there. I did what I needed to do, left, got the check from the relator, and saw it wasn't from her, but the estate. Looked up the name, and the woman and her son had been murdered, each shot multiple times. The son was killed in the basement, and the mom was in the hallway upstairs where I heard the sigh. The body sat in the home for almost 2 weeks before someone from her job called for a welfare check. The killer, who knew her son, entered the house from the basement sliding door. I still don't know why I went to the basement when I didn't need to for my job. Story 17. I always have had things happen to me, but I ignored most of them. I even went on meds to try and stop it. But then something happened that was so profound, so unbelievable, and so unexplainable, I had to believe, especially because several others experienced it around me, too. It flipped my worldview upside down and made me see how amazing the universe is, and that truly anything is possible. Once the mysteries of life basically grab you by the throat and B-word slap you awake, there's not ever going back. That's why I now give everyone the benefit of the doubt. Life is weirder than we can know. Story 19. There was this one time a few years ago when I parked in front of the neighbor's house and saw an old lady staring at me from the window. I barely go out on the streets of our house, so I don't really know the people in the neighborhood. I smiled and told her I'll only be here for a few seconds because I needed to pick something up from our house as I'm going to a party. No response, she just kept staring. A few days later, I remembered her and asked my parents if they knew the old lady from the neighbor's house. They said, "Yeah, we attended her funeral 2 weeks ago." The moment they said that, all of my arm hairs spiked up and I got chills all over my body. She was as solid as any regular person, so I didn't think of any reason why she just looked at me. The window was also about 4 meters away from the sidewalk, so I know my mind wasn't just making things up. I've been a believer in life after death ever since. Story 20. I was a complete skeptic until 2003 when one of my cousins opened up to me about strange activity in his house and urged me to investigate with him. I was confident that we wouldn't find anything at all. What happened over the subsequent months changed my life and how I view reality. Footsteps, disembodied voices, physical attacks, and poltergeist activity all happened in that house. The main culprit was a malevolent, hissing shadow person we nicknamed the Shape, but we suspect there was at least one other entity there as well. The entire ordeal was such a profound experience that I simply can't cover everything here. Me and my cousins ended up starting an official paranormal group a couple of years ago, mainly because all of us are still dealing with the enormity of what happened in that house. There's a video on our YouTube channel that summarizes our experiences. We're also in the process of filming and uploading a docuseries that goes more in-depth into everything that happened. The series also shows some of our high-8 footage that we filmed during our rudimentary investigations. We really didn't know what we were doing back then. Now that we're all older, we want to tell our story now before we forget too many important details. LOL.
If you've enjoyed this video, consider subscribing and check out more videos from the channel.